Boop. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are yet again. They said we wouldn't come back,
So did we.
but we did. I think I was the only one who believed in season 2.
We said, look, I believed in season 2. I just wasn't completely sure I'd be doing season 2 with you.
Wow, hey man, this was my idea.
It was your idea.
Just because you are the driving force behind it does not mean I'm not at the steering wheel here.
You went and made a mini you, so I was like, I don't know. Maybe he'll be back.
Give it like 15 years, man. The two of us are going to take over. Or the two of you are going to take over.
Have to go to therapy for the absent podcaster complex
Oh,
you gave me.
No. Lay back on the couch. It all began. Season 2, episode 3.
When it took us 2 months to record the first 4 episodes.
Lots of learning. It's basically we're doing it again. We're starting over, essentially.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, but we're making it.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Speaking of work in progress, but trying to set the bar high, Mr. Kyle, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the silent movie from the 20s, Wings, 1927.
1927. Okay, so Wings, released in 1927, is currently sitting at 94% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes and 79% from the audience. Audience, what do you want? What do you want? This
Sound?
is a silent film.
Preferably.
What did you expect it to be like from the mid 50s and you walk in, you're like, hold on a second, it's in black and white and I can't hear anything.
No, for me, it was really what got me is it's a 2.5-hour movie and they use the same 45-minute audio track. in
No,
it.
I actually recorded how long the audio track is. Do you want to know how long the audio track is?
Oh, please tell me.
10 minutes and 31 seconds.
Oh my god.
Over a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. Now, Kyle, let me ask you this. Let me ask you
I
this.
listened to it 14 times.
So,
Ah!
all right. I can still hear it, by the way.
Yeah, it haunts my dreams.
Do you want to know something interesting, though?
Sure.
That was not a part of the original film.
Really?
Originally, it would have no audio whatsoever. And you would have someone in the theater play a piano
with the score.
or an organ or something along those lines. And I don't think that they had original like scores. I think they just kind of played it like how, like a show.
Yeah.
It was like secondary entertainment while you were watching the movie.
Yeah.
But anyways, so biggest gripe about the movie, not actually originally a part of the movie.
Fair enough.
So there's that. There's another point for the 79%ers out there on Rotten Tomatoes. And then on IMDb, it has a 7.5. Now, most notably, this movie's remembered for one incredible shot, which we'll get to, but it is most notably known for the very first Oscar winner,
Wow.
Best Picture.
Wow.
It is the very first Academy Award winner, and apparently that like the show, I guess the award presentation took like 5 minutes. They were like, "Here are the awards, and you're done." And it wasn't even in 1927 when the film was released. So it was actually in 1929. So it was the best film of 1927, 28, and 29.
Okay. In its defense, for the time period that it was made, it was awesome.
Incredible.
Like inarguably, if I'd have been watching that in 1927, I'd have lost my freaking mind. Like, it was impressive. I was even impressed with some of the stuff they did, and I mean, I've seen every CGI practical effects war movie known to mankind, and I was like, damn, this is cool.
Yeah. It predates All Quiet on the Western Front by, I think, 2 years, and it predates King Kong by 6 years.
Yeah.
Dracula by 4. But there's something interesting about this that we'll also get to in a little bit. For the time, when we were watching it, almost 100 years old, there is nudity
Yeah.
and blood,
Yes.
which I did not expect because I've seen like the Universal horror movies of the early 30s, and neither of those were present.
Yeah.
And so I found that very interesting, and I have a little bit of the answer later on.
Cool.
So this was directed by William Wellman. I think that's one word, Wellman.
He did it pretty well, man.
He did pretty well, man. So it starts
God, we're
off
stupid.
with a little bit. Yeah, everyone knows this.
Everybody does. That's why they listen.
It starts off with a little like tribute. It says, "To those young warriors of the sky, whose wings are folded around them forever." I like that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next title screen, or text on the screen, is Colonel Charles A. Lindbergh paid simple tribute to those who fell in the war, June 12th, 1927. In that time, feats were performed and deeds accomplished, which were far greater than any peace accomplishments of aviation. So the film comes out in 1927, and what is this referring to, this tribute in 1927?
Yeah, so I couldn't find the specific speech about it because Charles Lindbergh was really the first modern American celebrity. So he gave lots of speeches, lots of times. I don't want to say that this one's been lost to the historical record. It probably hasn't. There are probably lots of World War I historians and aviation historians who know it. I couldn't find it.
Okay.
However, I mean, Lucky Lindy is the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. He's the great Renaissance aviator of the 20s, and he served, to my knowledge, he served in World War I, if I remember that correctly.
Okay.
So he would have firsthand knowledge of the crazy innovation that had to go into World War I combat aircraft, because people have to remember that the first flight is in 1903, 1904. By 1918, so a decade and a half later, you have guys doing full auto machine gun dogfights in powered planes, 3 and 4 and 5,000 feet above the ground.
Terrifying.
Yeah. It's kind of like thinking that in World War II we had propeller planes, and by 1969 we had a guy walking on the moon.
Right.
The technological innovations of the 20th century are unprecedented. It is the most technologically advancing period in mankind's known history. And it starts with World War I, honestly. Yeah. It starts with people figuring out really efficient, awful ways to kill each other, and then it just extrapolates into everyday life. So
efficient ways to kill each other. We'll get into that a little bit later. We got some more on that. We're going to start in on the movie, man. We have our protagonist, one of our two protagonists, Jack Powell. Jack is daydreaming of flying. And, well, I guess one of three protagonists. I keep adding to it, sorry.
Yeah.
Mary
I agree
Preston.
that there's three. Yeah.
Yeah. Mary Preston, our girl next door, literally. Once Jack pulled her out of a bonfire, and some days he regrets it. That is literally a line it says on the film.
I think we have to describe this to people. If you haven't seen a silent movie, what it is you get a minute or two of silent dialogue, because the actors are given lines that they speak to each other so that they can act properly for the movie.
Sometimes you can make out what they're saying.
Every once in a while. But then you'll have a minute or two of silent dialogue, and then you'll have a one-sentence description on a PowerPoint slide, basically.
Yeah. You're essentially getting the cliff notes of a conversation.
Yeah, it's like watching, I don't know, it's like watching a puppet show that little kids do about a story that you've read before, and you're like, I should know what's going on, but honestly, I don't have any.
Without the cards, you could probably make out 90% of what's happening.
Yeah,
it just kind of helps clarify.
They're very simplistic because they're silent, so you can't have really nuanced plot lines because people aren't going to pick up on them. So,
and interesting enough, right here we're about to see the beginning of what's called talkies, which is films with audio and dialogue. As mentioned before, Dracula is completely, has dialogue throughout. So that's only 4 years later.
Well, and Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, all these early 1930 Technicolor movies. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're still in black and white, but we're in you can almost see the difference in frames, black and white. We're very early on, and but it's kind of funny because the style of acting in silent films was only around for so long. Silent films really are a product of, for the most part, the 20s period. I mean, yes, there are obviously ones predating it and even ones following it, but for the most part, it really is the 20s. And anyways, this style of acting was outdated when talkies came around because there's so much expression, everything's over the top, it's dramatic. So
Well, you're a
have
caricature of
Right.
whatever you're doing. Like whoever you're playing, you are the most extreme version of that person, so
Right.
that people can understand like what you're doing.
So ironically, we think of like old people with their newspapers and like back in my day,
Back in my day.
even in the 30s, people were against these new talking movies because that's not the type of movies I grew up with. Those aren't real movies. So it's just interesting to see like how quickly these things, you just mentioned how quickly these things changed in this new innovation of film.
Yeah.
We have the first Academy Award winner, and in 5 years it's going to be outdated.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
people don't like change. Like that's just a historical
Yeah.
truth. Is people have never, since the beginning of time, actually liked change. Like it's not a thing that people get excited for. So
Yeah, it's and we're about to see a lot of change in this this period, even throughout this film. So a lot of innovation going into our next talking point where we meet two other characters. Sylvia Lewis, who is like the pretty girl, and she's sitting next to the wealthiest man in town, David Armstrong, who was our second of third protagonist. Clearly he's bored out of his mind with her singing, but he doesn't care. He's going along with it. But with this shot, the camera is attached to the swing that they're on, so they stay stationary while the background is moving while they're swinging. Little things like this that just really, I mean, from my personal expertise, I have not seen prior to this. Very innovative in the way that they did this. So Jack shows up in his car, which he calls the Shooting Star, and just convinces Sylvia to go for a ride with him. And then as he drives past Mary, who clearly is in love with Jack,
oh yeah,
as he drives past with Sylvia, he waves. He waves at Mary. And Mary's like on the verge of tears, like trying to hold it together, like waving back. And Jack's like, "Oh hey, look at this girl that I really like." So
look at my side piece. Oh yeah.
okay, so anyways, so we have the introduction of the love triangle here between Jack, Sylvia, and David. That's the introduction there, and then we're really going to get into going into our second act here with the war breaking out. And the war is described as a shadow that fell across the land until it covered every corner. And then even the text on the screen is like the word war is on fire, and it like zooms in towards the screen. Just little things like that
Oh, the tone of the movie takes a 180. Like
so
it's
neat, you know. Okay, so Jack and David both apply to be pilots. And then there's a Dutchman named Schwimp, I believe. There's this Dutchman who is essentially, they're like, "Hey man, you're not American, you can't fly." And he goes, "Listen here, bucko." And he takes off his shirt like he's gonna fight, and then he flexes his arm.
and he has a USA tattoo.
He has
on his
an American
bicep.
flag tattooed on his arm, and then he jiggles the fat of where his tricep is, and it waves like a waving flag. This guy's my favorite character by far.
yeah.
I'm glad that he's in as much of the film as he is. He brings a smile to my face every day.
And to clarify it for you, they call him Dutchman. He's a German immigrant. Dutchman is a derogatory term for Germans at the time because Germany in German is Deutschland.
Right.
And so they would tell people they were from Deutschland, like I'm Deutsch. And so Americans know they're German, but they call them Dutchmen because it's like, you know, just making fun of their language. So he's he's either a first generation or a second generation American immigrant from Germany. And that's why they don't want him to serve, is because they're like, we're fighting Germany. Like, what are you doing?
But he's all American, boys.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sylvia writes a love note to David. It's on the back of a picture for her. of her, I mean, Jack stops by and is like, I really like a picture. And then he sees it and he goes, gee, I didn't think you'd have this ready for me.
And she's like,
And on the back, it's like, with all my love to David. And Jack's like, thank you so much. And he takes it and he keeps it. And David's like, why did you give it to him? And she's like, I didn't want to make him sad.
She's like, you're all going to war. I'm not emotionally prepared for this. Okay?
What do you want me to do?
Like, what do you want? No, man,
Sylvia
you need to go.
is-
You need to go die alone in France. All right.
Right. Sylvia is put in a very tough
Unfortunate?
situation here. Yes.
Yeah.
So she makes it clear that she loves David, kissing him goodbye while Jack is touching himself to her picture. Because he's like stewing over her picture while they're making out in the field. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. Mary gives Jack her picture. He says, you can take care of the car, but don't you bust it up. Just shows where our women's rights are at the time.
Yeah. They ain't.
They can
They ain't
almost
there.
vote.
Yeah.
Can women vote by 1927?
Yeah, when the movie was made, women.
Right, but not
could
when the
vote.
war.
Not
was-
no. It's
okay.
1919, I think.
So we're in a gray period here.
Yeah.
As a parting gift, David's
1920.
parents.
Women could vote in
okay.
1920.
Okay, so they've been able to vote for a little bit.
For like long enough that they probably don't get dirty looks when they go to vote. You know.
Well, you never
maybe.
know. Probably. All right. As a parting gift, David's parents give him a teddy bear that he had as a kid. It's a little small bear that he can put in his pocket. This will be important later. He says goodbye to their dog, which looks like a less evolved Boston Terrier. Did
Yeah.
you notice this?
Well, it probably is a Boston Terrier, but dogs in the early 1900s looked way different than.
That's
they
what
do
I'm
now.
saying. It looked
Yeah.
like almost a dog, like a Boston Terrier or like Frenchie, but like its nose was longer.
Yeah, you should look up photos of French bulldogs back in the day, or like Jack Russell Terriers. Like, it's wildly different.
We need a historical movie about dogs so we can cover this.
Oh, no, we don't, because then they're all gonna die, and like I can't emotionally handle that.
Well,
man.
we need a good
Like,
yeah. Why do they kill dogs in movies? Just stop. Just
I think
stop
because at
doing
some
it.
point we quit caring about people. We're just like, yeah, well, enlist in France, you die. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what to tell you. Schwimp goes to do the same stunt to the sergeant as he is applying to be, or like trying to be a pilot, and before he can, the sergeant knocks him out.
The Irish sergeant, the
Irish sergeant,
the super
like-
comically Irish sergeant.
So as he's going to remove his little long sleeve to show off his tattoo on his arm, just gets
clocks him.
knocked out.
Hammers him.
Okay. So they're having problems. David and Jack are clearly having issues during like basic training. There's at one point they're doing like modified burpees, and Jack is just stomping the crap out of David's hat. They
Oh
get
my
into a huge brawl when they're doing like this boxing class. Jack keeps knocking David down, and it's at this point where you start to think like, I mean, you're rooting for Jack because he's like he's not from as much money, and
Yeah.
he's got like this real good spirit about him, and David's just kind of drab. At this point, Jack keeps knocking David down, and he keeps getting back up, and you're like, Jack's kind of the bad guy here.
Jack's kind of an asshole.
Jack's not as squeaky clean as I originally thought.
Jack's kind of the worst.
Yeah, so yeah, and it'll get worse. The two start wailing on each other. The entire class gathers around to watch. David proves he has heart, and we start to realize that he's been the protagonist, and he's just kind of dealt a bad hand because the first introduction to him is that, oh, well, Sylvia is so blessed because she gets to sit next to the wealthiest man in town, and it kind of seems like a curse that he has to carry.
Yeah.
That his family has money. I love the shot when they get to the airbase, the shot of the shadow flying over the birds, the
Yes.
shadow of the plane.
Yeah.
So many things in this film, it has to be practical. CGI did not
yeah.
exist. And when we get to things that are added in later, like they're literally drawn on top of the frames.
Yeah.
Like that's how they did it. So we'll get to it later. But anyways, we should add that at this point, Jack and David are best friends.
Yes, they're they've been shipped to France. Like they're
They're in France. Okay, see, I didn't know that. I didn't know where they were at this point.
Yeah.
Anyways,
As far as I know, they're in France.
right. I mean, that makes
we
the most
didn't
sense.
like America did not have its own air combat aircraft in World War One, so
Oh.
to do anything training wise, I can't promise they're in France at that point, but they probably are, and they're definitely in France when they learn how to fly actual combat aircraft because that's the only place we have them. But anyway, we meet Private White.
Private
who's
White,
this
who
very
says,
gung ho, super. I've never needed a good luck charm sort of guy.
right. He says, luck or no luck, when your time comes, you're going to get it.
And then
And
he
he
promptly walks out of the tent and crashes his airplane and dies.
White is now dark meat.
Yeah, dude, man.
David asks Jack, what's your lucky piece? Jack goes, it's a secret, which means it's a picture of your girlfriend.
It's a picture of your girlfriend. And David's like, oh, mine's this like little 6-inch long teddy bear that I've had since I was a babe.
Yeah. Then we're going to start getting into the actual war.
Yeah.
And now we haven't covered it yet, but I've seen like shots of like All Quiet. I keep comparing it to All Quiet on the Western Front, but because it's also World War One, and it came out around the same time. The scale, which just surprises me as to how many people are in these shots. Like you think of like
yeah.
silent films, you think of like one person in a room, and they have those moments in here, obviously. But for the most part, man, I tell you what, some of these shots they cover miles of land, they cover hundreds of people. You have
Yeah.
rows and rows of vehicles and planes lined up, of tanks later, just crazy. Anyways, so we start to see these huge, kind of like these cinematic set pieces for their time
Yeah.
of just combat, of just war.
Yeah, it's surprisingly brutal. Like
Right.
it really, like they bring the heat to the Western Front. Like,
Well, when you think of how many people are on screen,
yeah,
I mean, 9 times out of 10, we just watched Napoleon last year. I would say there's about the same amount of people on screen.
yeah. And the difference is in 1927, if you've got 500 people on screen, you hired 500 like extras, like because you don't have you can technically doctor photos. I don't know if you can doctor film yet, but they're not doing what they do now, where they just have 500 men and extrapolate it into a 5,000 man army.
Right. No. They're
Like,
definitely there. Now,
yeah.
as far as hired, I'm not sure, because I think with it being such a new invention,
Well,
you may be
hired,
like, hey, do you want to
volunteered.
be on
Yeah.
film? You'd have an entire town.
But
be
you
like,
have
yeah, let's
you
do
have
it.
500 actual humans.
Yeah, no,
there,
they're actually
like-
there though. There's no messing with the footage here. Okay, so Dawn Patrol, Jack and David are awakened by the sergeant with the most grim low angle in
Yeah.
cinematic history. That's not true, but like
It's pretty-
They literally there's like maybe a fill light behind him. There's no background, and there's just one light like under his chin, and he just wakes him up like, "Time to go, boys." And then he's just like,
You're on
okay.
the Dawn Patrol, and they're like,
Here we
okay,
go.
all right, Jesus.
Okay, so they say here to Merveille. Where is Merveille?
It's just a town in France.
Okay,
honestly.
okay.
Like,
All right.
yeah.
Captain Kellerman and the Flying Circus.
So that's a pretty direct ripoff of Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, and his flying circus.
Okay.
So that's the idea, is the Captain Kellerman is the Red Baron. He's not. Like,
Which
they don't call him
Which
that.
side are we on here?
German. So
Red Baron Pizza is based off of World War One German.
yeah, the Red Baron
Fighter
had like
pilots?
dude, the Red Baron had like 85 confirmed kills or something crazy like that. Yeah.
But they're for the bad guys.
Yeah, they are.
Bro, I've been buying their pizza my whole life.
And his squadron was called the Flying Circus because they flew these really brightly colored planes. And
That's wild.
they were the terror of the Western Front until he dies in 1918. But yeah, they were like, you did not want to come across the Red Baron and the Flying Circus.
That is insane. With the cancel culture to the extent that it is, how have we never heard of the Red Baron being a German fighter pilot?
You know, there's something like, it's a big generational gap, because I promise you, everybody listening to this podcast, probably over the age of 40, knows that the Red Baron's a German fighter pilot, because Snoopy in the Peanuts comics
Yeah.
and movies always hunts the Red Baron, who is a famous fighter pilot.
Huh. Didn't know that either.
Yeah, but that like there's a gap there where like, but it's World War I common knowledge, because I feel like most people my parents' age or a little older have a pretty decent idea of what World War I looked like and
Right.
was, because their grandparents' parents fought in it. So they grew up, the stories that like our grandparents tell of what their parents did, they grew up with World War I stories. you know?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
or had known at some point in their life somebody who had fought in World War One. It's kind of like how we feel about World War II veterans. Like by the time our parents were 20, most of the World War One veterans were gone, but they grew up knowing that they existed. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Like our kids won't have any idea what World War II was like unless they watch documentaries because it's not
There's so many movies on it.
it's not part of the public conscience anymore.
Yeah.
Like
There are definitely more movies on World War II than World War One.
oh, for sure, but it's
Yeah.
also a more uplifting quote unquote war cuz like World War 1 nobody's the good guy.
But Hitler was a soldier during World War One, right?
Yeah, and he almost got killed by a British sniper, and the dude let him go because it was like a day or two before the armistice ended up being signed, and the guy just didn't feel like shooting an unarmed messenger. Turns out that
Wow.
he probably should have. Like,
What a butterfly effect that would have
Yeah,
been.
for sure.
Okay. So they encounter the flying circus. The dogfight is on. We talked about this earlier. The only CGI, there's no CGI. So what they would do is with the frames of film. Now frames are literal pictures. Even today, there is no movement. It is, well, I guess with it being digital, I guess there is. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's an illusion of film, or it's illusion of movement. You're
Yeah.
watching something at like 24 frames per second. So you have pictures, and on these pictures, whenever like the guns go off or a plane goes down, there is orange or yellow, or there's fire essentially from the guns or from the planes. And so this is just drawn on to each of the frames. Now, at least I feel like this was the common way to do it, so I'm assuming this is how they did it here. As I was telling you, there's not a whole lot of behind the scenes for a movie made in the 20s, so they didn't really like record documentaries. Again, we talked about Napoleon. The freaking trailers were the behind the scenes of how they made it. So not the same way back then. Anyways, blood pours out of the guy's mouth after he's been shot, and I was wondering what is the first instance of blood on screen. And from what I gathered, it was essentially from the very beginning. Spoiler alert: when we get to the nudity in the film, same way. It didn't take long for people to realize like blood and boobs sells, and people will pay to come see it.
And it's also like the rise of film occurs immediately after World War One, and so the world is super disillusioned and jaded, and like, they don't care. Like
No.
there are actual zombie movies about zombie World War One soldiers being made in like 1919 and 1920
Nice.
in France. Like there has been so much death that people just don't give a crap anymore. They're like, show me what I want to see: blood and circuses. Like, let's go.
Yeah. Okay, so David's being pursued by Kellerman, who's the ripoff of the Red Baron.
Yeah.
His gun jams. Jack gets shot down, crashes luckily on the friendly side of the trenches.
Yep.
And then crawl through the charges, not gunshot. I guess it's gunshots and artillery. I would imagine, as they're going off, and
is spared by Kellerman's wingman or Kellerman himself. I'm not sure which, because they're the Knights of the Sky. There's like an honor to dogfighting.
And then we cut to Mary, who has also joined the war effort. She is serving, and she instantly runs over someone.
Yep.
And so she is kind of like what do you call it? An assistant almost.
Well, she's a nurse driver is what she's not a nurse, but she's an army driver that drives for the nursing corps. So
and then what is a Gotha?
yeah, so that is a giant World War One bomber. So like aerial warfare by the end of World War One is a lot more extensive than people think it is. Like the Germans bombed London in World War One. Not anywhere near to the extent that they did in World War Two, but the Germans specifically had these giant double-engined bombers that we see in Wings.
Yeah.
And they were exactly that. They were like 3 and 4 man, just massive World War One biplanes that could drop, I want to say, like low hundreds pounds of bombs on trenches or cities. And they were a beast because it's new. It would be like, we go to war with Russia, they have a freaking flying saucer. Like, is what it felt like to people. Like, you're just raining death from the sky for the first time in human history. Yeah, well, and because the Gothas have machine guns on the back. So it's not impossible to bring them down, but it's hard. Like, it's not an easy thing.
Right. It's essentially like a battleship in the sky.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Now that we've discussed what a Gotha is, this Gotha is planning on bombing Mervale, which is where Mary is.
Yeah.
And she arrives to an abandoned city, and she's like, "Why is nobody here?" And she
And
looks
then here
around,
come
and
the
there's
bombs.
this giant plane about to drop a big old bomb on her.
Oh yeah.
But Jack takes over. Jack takes out the Gotha while David takes out the ones that are trying to. What do you call them? There's like two
Wing-
planes flying.
Yeah, they're
Wingmen?
like escort. They're fighter
Yeah,
escorts.
so there's two there's two fighter pilots like going like with the Gotha. David takes them out. Jack takes out the Gotha itself.
And it is
then
at this point in the movie that you realize that these two guys are actually hellacious pilots.
they're
like they are,
incredibly good.
they are really good.
So they're then honored afterwards, and then we have intermission. Which I love intermissions, man. I wish they bring back intermissions. It's stupid. You watch a 3-hour movie like the Batman. I'm thinking of which ones. Recently, the Batman.
Dune needs an intermission. Like,
In game. I still haven't
100%.
seen Dune. It just doesn't interest me.
I wouldn't worry about it.
I don't like that Timothy Charlemagne guy.
Me neither.
I just don't. He just looks. I don't know.
Dude, he's just an edgy like Q-tip with dirty hair. Like that's just his whole character.
Yeah.
Nah.
I don't know. Anyways, this is not
Anyway,
about him.
back to the movie that we're talking about.
One of these days, I'll watch Dune and I'll be like, I'm so sorry.
No, but
Okay,
like, Kyle,
so-
what's the history of interstellar warfare?
Giant worms. We need to know about the worms.
Tremors, man.
All right. Yeah. So leave means Paris.
Yes.
They go on leave, and they word it on furlough from death. Jack has become quite the celebrity.
Oh yeah. Well, he's the shooting star, right?
He's the shooting star, man. He took out the Gotha. He saved the whole
Yeah.
city. He is essentially like the hero, and he's also quite the drunk.
Yes, he is.
And this is when we get to the shot that this film is remembered for. If you look up Ween's 1927, probably this will be the first or second video that pops up.
One word: boobs.
No, you are ahead of yourself.
Oh, I'm
Kyle.
sorry. I'm sorry. 2 words.
Not-
Almost boobs.
No, no, Kyle. 2 words. It would be a Oh shoot! Now I can't think of it.
3 words. Close
Gosh.
to boobs.
No, Kyle.
Damn it.
Enough of the boobs. You're distracting me. Pan, not a pan, not a zoom. Oh my gosh, what
A
is
fade.
it called?
Are
A
we
dolly
fading?
shot. It's a dolly shot. It's a dolly
Oh.
shot. Okay. But it's not a dolly shot like normally. The dolly is not on the floor. The dolly was actually on the ceiling. Okay. So it is this long, like kind of like tracking shot that goes between. It goes over a row of or a column of tables. Okay, and it goes between the people on or at each table, and then it ends with Jack, who has a bottle of champagne being poured into a glass in front of
or
him.
7. You know.
Yes. So, but anyways, this shot, it's so just watch it and you'll be like, this is 100 years old. Like it looks incredible.
yeah.
It was
Very
a huge.
smooth. Like there's no like movement in the frame. Like it's a very.
Yes. Well, because speaking of the behind the scenes, now the only thing that I did find behind the scenes, like it was a picture, and it was of the rig that they set up, and like I said, this thing is hanging from the ceiling, and it goes over top of all these tables, and to show that, you know, it's the only picture taken behind the scenes that I found. Shows that they knew what they were doing was pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And then obviously has been repeated over and over again, and you know, drone shots make it much easier to do. But regardless, they're on furlough, and Jack is enjoying himself with what seems like a plethora of alcohol
Yeah.
and women
yeah.
around him.
He has an
And
army's
has-
worth of booze and an army's worth of women, and he's just one man.
And he starts to see bubbles rise out of random things. And obviously these bubbles are like representative of a comfort for him. It's childish. It's something that takes him away from the war. And we'll see whenever he's reminded, hey, you've got to go back. Like he doesn't want to. He wants to stay with
Yeah.
the bubbles, is what he says. And so it's essentially it's kind of showing his trauma setting in early on.
Yeah.
Anyways, then we get to the half second that Kyle remembers of this movie.
It's a movie from 1927 with boobs in it. I don't know what you want from me, man. I was blown away.
Yeah, 100-year-old
You could say I
breast.
was. You could say I found the shot titillating.
Oh my god. Okay, so anyways, and
It's the
and
breast
if you
part of the
haven't-
movie.
If you haven't seen this, please don't watch this movie just for the boobs.
Yeah, you'll
okay?
be disappointed. It's
First
not long
off, you'll
enough
be
in the movie.
disappointed because it's like legitimately half a second.
Yeah.
And second off, this movie's great for so many reasons. Don't make it about that. Okay, so
yeah, fair, valid.
but I was interested in the history of nudity in films because, like I said, I was very surprised. Like, man, they got away with that.
Mm-hmm.
So Annette Kellerman is credited with being the first woman to appear nude in a film in the grand epic A Daughter of the Gods, which was from 1916.
Oh,
Production
Damn.
of films commenced almost immediately after the invention of the motion picture. The earliest film containing a simulated nude scene is of 1897,
oh,
in which the director's future wife wore a body stocking to simulate being naked.
wow.
The MPAA created its own censorship agency called the Hays Code, which brought about an end to nudity and risque content in films produced by the main Hollywood studios. The code was adopted in 1930.
Oh,
So this
okay.
precedes it. So you see less regulation in these early films. And then come 1930, you start to see a little bit of a backlash from the audience or certain people in the audience.
And for those of us not in the know, MPAA is Motion Picture Association of America.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the ratings board.
Yeah.
They're still around today. So, anyways, effectively it was enforced by 1934, but essentially was adopted by 1930.
Oh,
So
okay.
this predates what we think of as ratings at this time. But ratings were not the same at that point. It was essentially you had to go by these guidelines. There were rules that you could not break rather
Oh.
than you couldn't give it an R rating and say kids aren't appropriate to watch this. It was you can
Remake your
have
movie.
some things and you can not have some things, but you would literally like why it's called cutting film when you're editing is because you would literally cut out frames that had things you did not want in them.
Wow.
Okay, so the short man that walks in on Mary changing looks like an actual leprechaun.
Yeah.
I'd like to point that out.
Yeah.
Mary is sent home because the affairs that she's having with Jack, which was none. She didn't have one, but they thought she did.
No, but
And then Jack has to return for what's quoted as the big push. Kyle, what is the big push?
it is the Battle of Saint Mihiel, and it is the second to last major offensive in World War One.
Okay.
So it is basically, to explain it, I have to give a quick recap. So World War One starts in 1914.
Okay.
It's very quickly a stalemate. It remains a stalemate until 1917, when the Germans finally bring the Russian Empire to its knees and force them out of the conflict vis-a-vis the Bolshevik Revolution. And the Bolsheviks sign a peace treaty with Germany and give them giant swaths of land and take Russia and its 140 million population and its like 8 million man army out of the war. So Germany takes its crap, like 5 million men, 6 million men that it had in the East, turns them around, moves them across the German Empire, and tries to use them to break the back of what's left of the British and French armies on the Western Front in 1917. That almost works, but they hold at the last minute and the German offensive runs out of steam. Americans start arriving by the end of 1917, early 1918. Yeah, so the Battle of Saint Mihiel is in September of 1918. It is the American Expeditionary Force and 110,000 French reinforcements, and it's this giant offensive that pushes the Germans out of this salient in the line that they had held for forever, and it finally like breaks their last fortress on the Western Front, their like biggest single concentration of troops.
Right.
And it cements the Americans in the eyes of the British and French. Like, oh, okay, these guys can fight. Like,
So it's essentially like the final battle. It's the turn of the war. Not the final battle, but it's like it's the one where we start pushing them back.
Yeah,
we've
there-
got them on their
there's-
heels, send them all the way back to Germany.
yeah, and there's like 4 big moments for the Americans in World War One. The Second Battle of the Marne, where the American First Division helps hold the Germans off of Paris.
Yeah.
The Battle of Bella Wood, where the Marines hold the line for days and days and days. The Battle of Saint Mihiel, which is the one in the movie, and then finally the Battle of the Meuse Argonne, which, if you've heard of the Lost Battalion in World War One, the final offensive of the war is pretty American.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is like the Americans are proving themselves. Like, we've proven we can defend in a trench. Now let's prove that we can take a trench, sort of deal.
All right. Well, we're gonna take the trench and we're gonna take the skies because Jack and David are studying maps, going over their flight plans. I don't know if I meant to say flight or fight. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, they're the
Same thing. Yeah, we get the
Same.
idea. They're ready to kick ass. Okay.
And then, unfortunately, they have one of those nice little, like, heart-to-heart, come-to-Jesus talks that turns into a spat.
Yeah. So David tells Jack that he's got a hunch he's not coming back today, and he wants him to hold his teddy bear for him.
Because
Jack
that's what
is
you
like,
do. You
no.
give your good luck charm to somebody else on the day
Right.
that you think you're gonna die.
Well, because he wants it returned home. He doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Keep. So, Jack. So, anyways, Jack finds out Mary's been fired and defends her, but then he's immediately going to be like, "Hey, David, I feel like it's only right if I tell you I really want to have sex with your girlfriend. Like, really want to. I love her,
And she loves me.
I have her
because
picture in
she
my
gave me
locket.
this photo.
And then David takes it and tears it up to protect him
Yeah.
from seeing that Sylvia wrote it to David. So they have their spat. The bear gets left on the table. Jack ignores David as they take off. Earlier in the movie, whenever they go up to fight, I think it's when they're fighting Kellerman, like David goes, "All set?" And he's like, "All set." Like they have this little cute little bromance moment. And then David tries to repeat that and he goes, "All set?" And Jack just doesn't
He's
look
like,
his
"Yeah,
direction, just
whatever."
stares straight ahead, and he's like, "I'm flying off." Anyways, Germans had blimps at this time.
Yep.
Crazy.
Oh yeah, war zeppelins. Yeah.
We see that Germans are still very much putting up a fight. You have
Oh, yeah.
You have a march of, I think, French soldiers, and they basically bomb this march or this line of soldiers, and so they're still putting up a fight. And in the air, David is engaged in a dogfight with German planes. Jack goes after two balloons in the valley. They're like spy blimps.
Yeah.
Was that legit? Did they use those that way?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, they did. Honestly, I should have prefaced with my friend Samuel for specifics. I know that Zeppelins were very popular in
Led
Germany.
Zeppelins?
No, those fall down. No, helium Zeppelins.
Yeah, how does
because,
that fly?
Well, it's a balloon with a propeller on the bottom. Is really what you.
And they are filled with helium.
Yeah, and the
Which
thing
one's
is,
the Hindenburg? Which one's the
Yeah.
one that blew up?
Hindenburg.
Hindenburg, yeah. That predates or after this?
Post dates. Hindenburg's in 1933, 1936, somewhere in there.
Was that how was hydrogen, right?
Yeah. And it might be hydrogen. Point being, they have these big zeppelins, and the reason they use them and war balloons is because they are notoriously difficult to actually shoot down. In the sense
It's a
that
balloon.
yeah, but it's not like a shoot and pop balloon because they're so massive. Like, you have to put a lot of bullets in a zeppelin to bring it down. because it's-
Really?
Well,
See,
because
that
it's not an empty balloon, right?
Right.
It's a giant like canvas frame stretched over steel and wood support struts. So one hole in it
Oh.
will slowly leak, but it's not going to blow the balloon up. And so you have to put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of holes in it, or fly right at the gondola that has machine guns in it, and there are machine guns on the top of the Zeppelin. They're a bitch and a half. Like, they're very difficult to shoot down.
Okay. I was confused because I was like, how are they spy planes if like one sniper could take it out? Like it didn't
Yeah.
make sense to me.
But that's
okay,
the
that
thing.
makes
They're
because
they're
they
war
are difficult
balloons.
to
They're
take out.
they're stretched over an airframe. Like,
I got you. Interesting. Okay. Well, neat. Now you know how
you would
Zeppelins work.
you would think that stabbing a tire would make it explode, right?
Right.
Because the tire's supposed to just be a balloon, but it's got those metal wire frames in it, so it doesn't. It leaks,
Okay.
but it doesn't just blow up.
Okay, so Jack goes after these balloons. He starts shooting at them, and then you see literal shots of people jumping out of these balloons. There's no faking it. You can see the ground, you can see the blimp, and you see people jump out and have parachutes. And I'm like, you risked your life
Oh yeah.
for this shot. Anyways, so Jack returns for home. David has been shot down, and he crashes into a swamp. Essentially, that's what it looks like. Then there's a little spot right here that I thought was kind of an interesting technique. I talked to you a little bit about how they used to draw over top of the frames.
Yeah. They do that in the original Star Wars too. All the lasers are colored
interesting.
in on the film. Yeah, that's actually that technique hangs around until the rise of digital editing.
Nice.
It just gets better because
Yeah.
they get better at doing it. But yeah.
Anywho, so he not only did they do that, they painted. So you notice how this film is not necessarily black and white. It's more like yellow tinted or blue tinted. So they would, since they had to have light, cameras could not be shot in the dark. Okay, there's no shooting at night essentially. So in order to shoot it to make it look like it's nighttime, they would simply tint the frames blue.
Oh.
And so it's all shot during the day, but if it's if they're trying to make it look like it's nighttime, it's tinted blue, and if it's daytime, it's tinted yellow.
And that's fascinating because it is really easy to tell in the movie, like when it's night and when it's day. Like that's not really anything that you struggle to comprehend. So that's cool.
Yeah, so that's how they did it. Anyways,
so David is shot down, but he survives. Like
David's
he
shot
lands in,
down.
like,
He's
a
hiding
marsh.
from the advancing German soldiers. Jack thinks he's dead, and a German plane flies over the base, and leaves he literally throws a note out of the side of it saying basically
Tied
we killed
to a
David.
rock.
Yeah, it says we killed David. Not he doesn't obviously say David, but he said well, and I don't understand why. I feel like that's not something they would do.
You know, believe it or not, it wasn't unheard of. So World War I is the end of like chivalrous warfare.
Really?
So it's the end of like my rank entitles me to a certain type of treatment. And there was also, and like it's too strong to call it a creed. There was a generally shared idea amongst pilots that because what you were doing was so inherently dangerous anyway, you didn't go out of your way to kill each other. Like you totally would if you met in the air, but case in point, if you crash on the ground, most guys aren't going to strafe you down. Like if you're lucky enough to survive the crash, you're like, okay, good for you.
Well, I shot his plane down, but I'm gonna let him live.
Yeah, like if he was supposed to die, he'd have died in the plane crash. Like we're flying twigs and sticks with engines and guns on him. Like it's
So the note that he dropped says that he was killed by the German soldiers on the ground, not that he actually himself killed them.
And
anyways,
it's both a form of courtesy and a form of intimidation because David and Jack are supposed to be like these immortal, like untouchable pilots, and they would have recognized those planes. There aren't that many aircraft in World War I,
right?
And they're all going to serve in the same general areas, and so those guys have been shooting at each other for the better part of a year.
So essentially, here's our. I guess this is their big push. Here's our finale to the film. We're going into third act here. Jack is sent to fly over the trenches, which is where David essentially is. He has David's bear with him. There are these huge formations of dozens of planes, which they actually shot, and I want to say it was in Texas. They actually shot with all these like actual World War I planes, or like replicas. But essentially, these are real. These are dozens of planes flying in the sky together. Jack attacks the Germans as they cross a bridge. There's a tank. And Germans had tanks.
Yeah. So the Germans have a handful of tanks. Yeah.
Okay.
They're those big square looking
Right.
ones.
They don't
with a
look
single
like
cannon
tanks like
on the
what we
top.
would think of.
No.
Yeah. There's a shot where a tank is driving forward, and it comes within like 2 feet of a guy laying on the ground, and I'm like, that could have been so bad,
Oh yeah.
so easily.
Oh yeah.
There's also a spot where Germans are hiding in some sort of like underground covered area, and a tank just runs them over.
Yep.
The American forces reach the enemy trenches. They're outnumbered and they're fighting back. But Jack helps even the odds. You were saying like strafing. I think he is strafing against them.
Yeah, he
So
is.
this may kind of show, like you said about the kind of not necessarily a creed, but kind of like a creed. Jack's mad. He's angry that he thinks he lost David. And he's out for revenge here. It's a very, I mean, for the time, it had to be kind of a shock to see all the things happening.
Yeah. Well, and it shows the nature of World War One, which is just like industrialized warfare, like let off the chain too, because that's not a thing that would have happened in 1914. You didn't have the ability to strafe people in 1914, and by 1918 you've got guys flying close contact combat missions strafing enemy lines in their biplanes. Like,
so I love his totally normal expressions as he's just massacring dozens of soldiers.
well, he's just like mentally checked out. Like he's just very much like traumatized beyond all belief at this point. I think is really
we checked in on David. David is in the Mad River, which is I guess what they call it, the Mad River. David is fleeing and he's behind enemy lines. There's a German like air base, and he devises an escape plan. One of the planes has the engine running. The guy standing next to it, who I'm assuming started the engine, he's like a mechanic type. He's not a pilot, obviously.
Right.
David just walks over to him, punches him in the face, and then hops in the plane. I like to think that this guy has lost like 8 planes during the war.
Oh yeah,
Like, he just keeps turning them on, turning around, and someone's
somebody
there.
somebody was like, "Oh, Gunter lost another plane."
I like to think
damn.
that this is like not the first time this happened to this guy. But anyways, so the Jack has essentially, not single-handedly by any means, but Jack has helped lead the French and the Americans to a victory. We see a dead soldier laying over top of what is it called? The Imperial Cross. Is that right?
Oh, the Iron Cross. Yeah.
Iron Cross, yes. So there's a dead German soldier laying over top of this large Iron Cross. Very symbolic. Looking at it now, we're like, okay, that's a little on the nose.
Like, all
But for the
right,
time, I mean, you got to think movies are, this is art to the time that it came out. So anyways, I mean, looking back, it's a little much, but I get to the point. So Jack kills as many of the retreating German soldiers as possible. And then on his way back, he sees
a German plane,
a sole German plane,
flown by none other than David.
But he has no way of seeing that it's David.
No.
So he thinks this one German plane who saw that they were losing is going back to the American base, sneaking over there to do as much damage as he can. And
So he does what anybody would do. He just opened fires on him.
He engages the plane, and David is screaming at him, pleading with him, "It's me, it's me." And he uses maneuvering tactics, and he tries to dodge him. Obviously, he's not going to turn around and try to engage him as well. He's just trying to escape, but he's trying to let him know it's him. And Jack is just ruthless, and he shoots him down. And the shot of him landing, man. I keep looking for like miniatures because that's what was common at this time.
Yeah, when he crashes into the farmhouse. Yeah,
that's real.
Oh my god,
it has to be real. It has to be.
It has to be. Like,
there's a guy in frame who runs away, and then the plane crashes, and then he runs back in, and there's no cut. There's no cut there. So it looked. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but man, it looks legit. It looks like they took a plane and they were just like, all right, launching into the house.
They probably just built it out of like balsa wood and like really lightweight stuff, and then they just padded the guy in the plane and were like, "Good luck,"
There is something that American cinema has perfected over the 100+ years that we have had films, and that is that final moment climax.
No, man.
And damn it, if this isn't the best, the best one from the oldest movie I've seen. Again, I reference like Dracula. Dracula ends with them just opening up the coffins and just hitting them with a hand, like hitting the stake into the heart, and that's it.
Yep.
Like there's no build, and oh my gosh, I was like, please, David, like get away, come on, buddy.
Yeah, get out of there.
It's done so well because you like David more than you like Jack.
And Jack lands, and he's so happy that he shot down this German plane, and you understand why he's happy, and the whole time you're like, you piece of shit.
He cuts the Imperial Cross off the back of the plane.
Yep.
He's like taking it as a trophy. He's so proud of himself.
And then the owner of the house comes out and says, "Hey, the guy you shot down isn't going to make it, and he wants to see you." And Jack is like, "Okay, why does this random German pilot want to meet me?" But sure.
He goes into the room, and there's him standing still. His expression is so much regret, so much sadness in his face, and it just stays. And it does. Frankenstein does this as well. When we first see the monster's face, he turns towards the camera and he stays still, but the camera, it's like 3 different cuts of him, and it's not a zoom, but every time that it cuts, it gets closer to his face, and I feel like it's so good, man. And then it cuts and you see David dying on the table or on the floor. I think is he on the table?
He's kind of like propped up on rubble, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
so anyways, then
but Jack like shot him while he was shooting the plane.
Yeah. No, he
shot him
shoots,
through the chest.
He shoots David. He shoots the plane down too, but he shoots David.
Yeah.
And then the two are like, man, I feel like crap, and David's like, it's okay, buddy. I know why you did it.
David's
it's
like,
fine.
it wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done. So like, I understand.
He's
how
like,
this,
I had to get back. I was trying to get
Yep.
back. And he goes, I hate myself. He doesn't say that, but essentially,
No, but
man,
it's- yeah.
like it's hard. He goes, David, you're not badly hurt. I'll get a doctor. And he's like, no. The Frenchman says, and then you can say it better than I can.
Well, it's probably supposed to be like "C'est ça la guerre."
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it translates to that is war.
yeah. And it is.
Yep.
It's just meaningless death. Like,
Yeah. Especially for World War One, like you had kind
yeah,
of gone into a
yeah,
little
no
bit.
joke.
David dies. And then there's one last all set. There's one last all set, and then he dies. That was not the other way around.
Yeah.
He's flying into the sky forever, you know. The motor on the plane stops spinning, symbolizing David's heart, and Jack returns to a parade of roses. His parents are there. David's family and Sylvia are mourning the loss that they've gone through, and Jack returns the teddy bear, and essentially just praises the bravery of David.
And then because you can't keep a good man down, meets his main squeeze Mary and lives
Yeah.
happily ever after.
So then he discovers, oh, I've been in love with Mary the whole time, and then they kiss, and that's
And
the
then
end
the
of movie.
movie's it's a very like weird, and you know it's coming because you know they're not going to leave that plot line hanging. But it's a very odd, like, hey, I know that you just murdered your best friend, but it's,
You know, honestly, that whole last bit I feel like was not necessary at all.
they could have just ended
coulda-
it with David dying.
They could
and
have ended it
would've
with
been
David
fine.
dying, and then like maybe like a shot of the roses flowing into the street as like Jack solemnly walks down the middle.
Well, and the
But,
power of the end of the war is great for everybody who hasn't lost somebody in
Yes.
it. Yeah.
So, anyways, damn, this is a good movie, man. When you think of what they had to go off of, you know, it's just incredible. It's incredible. 60-second review time.
Oh,
Now,
boy.
reminder, Kyle.
We have to both fit it within 60 seconds.
Both of
Yeah.
us in 60
Yeah.
seconds.
Okay.
Are
All
you
right.
ready? You're
Sure.
going first.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. Overall rating, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I'm not the biggest fan of silent movies, but it's good. You should definitely watch it. The movie itself is a piece of history, and it's about history. And the World War I accuracy could only be found in a movie made directly after the conflict.
Oh wow, you gave me so much time. Okay. Man, this movie is one of those where I love it so much, but I'm not gonna put it on like a Friday night. It's not a kick back, have a couple beers and watch this movie.
Yeah, it's
It
a
is
slog.
a find someone who loves history or
Yep.
loves film and watch it and just be in absolute awe of how incredible it was that they made this film, that they put the detail, the attention, the effort into it, and that they did it without a single computer, period. Like, just incredible. Out of that, respect for this film, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Love it,
Fair.
love it, love it. All right, 2
Fair.
seconds to spare, boys. That's how we do it.
Hey, that's how we do it up in here.
Okay.
Also, one of the questions you sent me was which plane was better, and the answer is it depends on who you ask.
Okay.
Because the British, the Americans, and the Germans all have their own fighter planes, and they all
Yep.
develop multiple ones in World War One. So at this point, the Germans are using a Fokker, probably, or maybe an Albatross.
Hey, man, can we watch the language?
Yeah. The British would be using a Sopwith Camel, and the French, and by extension the Americans, are using the Newport 28, which they're all single wing. They're all bi wing fighters.
Yeah.
And it depends. The American one, the French one that they lend the Americans, is widely considered the best combat aircraft of World War One.
Okay.
It doesn't have the most kills though because it was the newest
Okay.
that was there. So yeah, none of them are like incredibly agile by our standards, but for the time, like if you see the planes that they're flying in 1914 to scout enemy lines versus the ability of the planes they're flying in 1918, it's wild. It's insane. So
Yeah, technology and the advancement, specifically in the military, and the combat that they were, combat was evolving at this point.
yeah, or the fact that tanks are not a thing that exist in 1914. And by 1918, the British have like 1,000 of them,
Yeah.
and the French have 1,000, and the Germans have like 18. So
All right, Kyle. Next
All
week.
right.
Okay, so I'm gonna make an executive decision for what we're watching next week because I've been wanting to watch this.
Okay.
I'm gonna describe this movie to you, and I want you to tell me what you think it is.
Oh boy.
Okay, the guy from Yellowstone does a worse Tombstone.
Oh, Wyatt Earp.
Yeah. Okay. That was
Easy
an
peasy.
easy one. That was an easy one. We'll make it harder going forward.
Yeah.
Let's watch Wyatt Earp, man. I've been wanting to watch it.
You should have said that Dennis Quaid has a lung disease and made me sputter for a little.
I didn't know Dennis Quaid played Doc.
He plays Doc Holliday.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not gonna be able to touch Val Kilmer.
No,
Anyways,
he's not.
anyways, moving on. We're
And
gonna
you're not
watch.
you're not gonna like it as much as Tombstone either. I'm just fair warning.
Oh no,
Like,
I'm fully aware. I know.
It's-
Yeah, Tombstone was on in one of my patients' rooms the other day, and
Oh my God,
I
so
was like,
good.
dude, you got to mute that or something, or I'm gonna spend the next hour and a half sitting in this room watching this movie. So, anyways,
helping somebody from their knee surgery, and you're like, I'll be your Huckleberry.
yeah. What do we want? We're doing an hour and a half of therapy while we watch this movie.
Yeah.
Anyways, I hope y'all are enjoying what we're doing so far.
And if you're not, please don't tell us.
Yeah, if you're not, tell us how to improve it, or just don't.
Or just don't. Or just leave us alone. We're just boys.
We're trying our best here.
We're doing our best. I don't
feel like
even
we're
know how a
much more-
computer works.
I feel like we're much less confident second season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We were overly confident first season, not confident enough second season. Third season, we're gonna be right where we're supposed to be. But
Sure.
all right, everybody. We will listen. You'll listen to us next time. No,
We'll
I can't
listen
end
to
that
you.
way. I can't end that way. I gotta do something different. That was terrible. I can't end it like that.
We'll
Okay.
see you next week. How about that?
See ya next week, ladies and gentlemen.